If you ever feel stuck when you first pick up your guitar, it can be a good idea to learn these chord tricks instead of jumping in to try to play full-length songs. Chord tricks are things that you should learn that come up in a bunch of different songs. And by learning these chord tricks, you'll be able to learn songs much faster in the future. Plus, it'll give you something great to play when you first pick up your guitar, like when you're in a guitar store. Now, if you know how to play an A chord, I'm gonna teach you 5 tricks that all the pros use. It's gonna make you sound like a pro too. Let's jump right in. First off, you might have noticed that there's a bunch of different grips that people use to play the A chord. Either like this, or using this grip, or even this grip with these fingers. You need to know that whichever one of those that you pick, they're all okay. So just pick one and stick with it for now. One way you can get better at holding this grip is to practice this thing called alternating bass. Now, it's really easy on the A chord because it's just the 2 open strings. We have the A string and then the chord, and then the E string and then the chord. A string, chord, E string, chord. Start doing this with all downstrokes. A, E, A, E. As you get better with it, try this boom chukka pattern, meaning like this. Bass note and then a down up on the chord part, bass note, down up on the chord part. Faster, it's like this. Last thing you can add is a little walk up like that. It's a cool way to just jump right into it. This bar chord grip is great because it allows you to just use one finger to play the whole chord. If you're struggling with this chord shape, simply pressing down harder is not the solution. The answer is the way that you're angling your finger. It's all about the angles. You see, when you do full bar chords, you'll be using the outside part of the finger, meaning the thumb side part. But since this is a partial bar chord, meaning we're only going across, in this case, 4 strings, you'll want to use what's called the inside part of your finger, which is this side, the middle finger side of your finger. What I'm doing, if you notice, my finger is actually rotated to use that inside part of the finger. If your thumb is on the back of the guitar, like this, it's almost impossible for you to have this inside part of the finger pressing down on the strings. What you need to do is start to take this left-hand thumb and start to pull it like this, over the neck of the guitar. You can see what happens to my index finger as this part of my hand rotates this way. As it rotates this way, this finger will naturally start to rotate to the inside part of the finger. Now the thumb can mute the low E string. Now we don't have to slide our pick in this tiny little space right here in between the strings. Now we can strum across all 6 strings, and it sounds great. Now that you got your thumb wrapped properly over the side like this, try this cool riff for rock and roll type sounds. Now see, what's happening here is, since the thumb is behind where I'm pressing down on the 3rd fret of the lowest E string, it's automatically muted until I press that note down. So as soon as I release the 2nd finger, the thumb mute takes over and you've got a perfect A chord. And then for bluesy sounds, try adding the 3rd fret of the A string, and then also the 5th fret of the D string. What about the E string? Well, the E string is simply going to be muted, like this. Now what happens is that the end of my finger here is just not pressing down as hard as this part of my finger here. So that way, that string is muted, and now the low string is muted. Now, if you're one of those people where this part of your finger can bend inwards like this, then it might be really easy for you to press down these 3 strings and then have this string be open to ring out. But if your finger doesn't bend like that, it's never going to. Do not try to force it, okay? My finger doesn't bend like that. You need to work on that muting technique. One of the best benefits of being able to use this A bar chord grip is now you have 3 fingers left over to play melodies, hammer-ons, trills, and ornaments to help spice up that chord. So that brings us into number 3, ornaments and melody notes. When we talk about ornaments or melody notes, we're talking about places that we can hammer on or pull off or do trills so we can enhance the chord that we're working on. Here's the spots you need to remember. On the second string, we can use the third fret like this. That makes it into what we call an A sus4 chord. Practice it a couple ways. Practice just playing the chord and then the A sus chord, but then also practice playing hammer-ons and also pull-offs. And then you can try a trill like this. Trill is where you do a hammer-on, pull-off. On the next 3 thicker strings going up in this direction, you can use your third finger and hammer-on the 4th fret like this. And on the A string, we can use the 2nd fret as well. Remember, you don't have to go down, you can also ascend up like this. You don't have to use these as hammer-ons or pull-offs, you can also just use them as color tones to add to the chord. Any of these spots will work. On the lowest string E, you can use the 2nd and 4th frets as walk-up notes to get into the A, or you can use them as walk-down notes to give you some bass movement in the chord as well. Number 4 is going to be another way that you can play this A chord, something called the long A. This is a really great voicing. What you need to do is reach your pinky out to the 5th fret of the 1st string. Now again, I'm internally rotated on this index finger, and that helps the reach a little bit as well. One of the most fun styles that you can play on the guitar is Delta Blues. One of the first things I'll teach all my students in Delta Blues is how Robert Johnson uses the A and A7 to enhance that A chord when he's playing blues. So try this. Long A, A7 with the 2nd finger down. But there's also a bunch of other cool chords that are right around this too. We have A major 7, A7, and then A6. Now if you know some other chords, a good way to practice those is this cool walk down progression where the high voice walks down in this way. Listen. That brings us into number 5, chord pairs. What other chords pair well with this A chord? The first 2 you should add is D and E. But you might want to get some minor chords in there. A really common minor chord that comes paired with A is F sharp minor 7. Now that might sound like a lot, and you might have known it as a bar chord, but there's an easier way to play it. If you can do this A chord with a bar grip, then all you have to do is wrap the thumb to grab this 2nd fret of the lowest string. And then now you have a great F sharp minor 7, which is really easy to grab. So practice going from A, F sharp minor, and then adding either the E or the D, and come up with your own cool progressions.